Well, the Sooners are on the road this week. They're going to Ames, not necessarily the big destination that everyone wants to go to, but I'll be there. So I'm excited to be there. 11 a.m. kickoff. And I think it is a pretty pivotal game for the rest of the season for OU. We had a bye week to get rested, to get some guys healthy. And now you look at, okay, you've got this final stretch of the year to really do something with the season. You could still finish 10-3. I mean, not likely. No one's really expecting that. You could also do the inverse of that. You could probably lose every game from here on out and totally miss a bowl game. So it's a very interesting opponent in Iowa State, who hasn't played probably the best of the best in the Big 12 yet, doesn't have a win in the Big 12 yet. But at the same time, they play pretty much everyone within one possession. And we don't trust this OU defense at all. So it's a very interesting matchup that I think is really going to tell us where this team is going to go over the final stretch of the season.
Yeah, having the bye week come at the time that it did for this Oklahoma team, I think that it couldn't have shaped up any better. Obviously, coming off of a win against Kansas, you're able to build some momentum going into the bye week, that we were able to get your guys some rest and recovery, kind of get into the film room, start to, get the young guys some more reps and experience, having that extra week of practice built in without a game on Saturday. But no, you make a really, really good point. Oklahoma's sitting right now at 4-3. Obviously, the first 7 weeks of the season is not the start that many fans hoped for, especially that 3-week stretch towards the end of September and early October. But Oklahoma has a chance right now. You mentioned it, the 5 games that we've got left. Oklahoma has a chance to win every single game, but they also have a chance to lose every single game. That's that kind of describes this league from top to bottom. But I know that one thing, having Dylan Gabriel back, if he can continue to stay healthy and play like he has been, Oklahoma is going to be competitive in each of these 5 football games. I think I can confidently say that. But we've heard for quite some time that Oklahoma was hoping to get a guy like Billy Bowman back, kind of the spearhead of that secondary, a true captain of the OU defense. We hope that we were going to get him coming back off of the bye week. I'm not sure how likely that is going to be, how severe that knee injury was, but we'll see. But yeah, you make a really good point. Iowa State's sitting right now at 3-4, 0-4 in the Big 12 Conference. But guys, 4 losses by combined 14 points for Iowa State in Big 12 play. Baylor by 7, Kansas by 3, K-State by 1, and Texas in Austin only losing by 3. And Adam, if we're being honest, Iowa State pretty much gave that game away. They should have beat Texas, had every opportunity to do so going down the stretch in the final couple of minutes. But yeah, this is about as good of an 0-4 Big 12 conference team that OU that OU is going to be matched up with again on Saturday. And the fact that it's on the road in Ames, I don't care what time the game is, I don't care how good Iowa State is that specific year, that passionate fan base, that place is going to be juiced and ready to go for when OU kicks this thing off at 11 a.m. on Saturday.
So when OU has the ball, kind of an interesting clash of styles here. We haven't seen Iowa State go up against any of the top offenses in the conference. I don't think. But who is the best offense that Iowa State has faced so far?
Well, I mean, they faced K-State and they faced Texas, so 2
and Kansas with Jayden Daniels,
and like I said, between Kansas, K-State, and Texas, that's 3 losses by a combined 7 points. So you could make a serious case that Iowa State's maybe 5-6 plays away from instead of being 3-4, they might be 6-1 or 5-2, something like that. But statistically speaking, when Oklahoma's got the football, Dylan Gabriel in this OU offense is set to face the best defense statistically in the Big 12. So far this season, Iowa State is ranked number 1 in scoring defense, giving up just 15 points a game. They're number 1 in rushing defense, allowing just 105 yards a game. That's roughly around 3.3 yards a carry. And they're number 1 in rushing defense allowed, but which I just said that, I apologize. Number 1 in passing defense as well, just a hair under 185 yards a game for this Iowa State secondary. So John Heacock's group is playing extremely well yet again in Ames, and you've got to give this defensive coaching staff a ton of credit this year, because the Cyclones lost a ton of production from a year ago with Mike Rose, the linebacker, with Greg Eisworth, the All-American safety. Will McDonald, as many OU fans are aware of, that is the impact player for the Cyclones defense on Saturday. OU fans should be very familiar with this guy, what he's done over the last couple of seasons. Great player coming off of the edge. This guy definitely is going to be playing on Sundays. And even though Iowa State, Adam, only has 6 sacks so far this year in Big 12 games, this is a defense that plays extremely well together at all 3 levels. So this is going to be a big challenge, and probably the biggest challenge from, maybe not necessarily going up against, a defense that is as talented as Oklahoma, but they run a certain scheme under John Heacock, and they run it extremely well.
Cameo by Lincoln the dog who still is named after OU's former coach.
That dreaded Amazon truck, Adam, showing his ugly head again. But yeah, the dog's in the house.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is, and maybe you'll know the team that I'm thinking of here because I can't remember it at the moment, but I know someone brought up the Jeff Lebby offense, and someone was running, the rush 3 drop 8 against him when he was at Ole Miss, and I think Ole Miss ran for something like over 250 yards against that particular team. So I'm curious to see how that goes. I know we all have the nightmares of how Lincoln Riley would continue to try to throw it deep against Iowa State, trying to force the passing game to work. So it'll be interesting to see what Jeff Lebby does strategy-wise, not just from a running perspective, but we saw a lot of really short passes against Kansas in the last game. Passes, that were like 4 or 5 yard, hooks, screens, things like that were really just, running plays essentially. So I'm curious to see what strategy he goes with there. And is he able to be content with that? I think it's tough for offensive coordinators to be content with that and not try the big play. And that's what Iowa State tries to bait you into. So I'm curious to see if Lebby has the patience to stick there.
Yeah, I think when you're going against the type of defensive scheme that Iowa State has made famous over the last couple of years, because it's been able to, kind of handicap a lot of the things that Oklahoma has liked to do offensively. But I think that, tempo is going to be one that I think Jeff Lebby is going to try to utilize a lot this week. Not allowing Iowa State to substitute, kind of keeping them on their toes, not be able to try to catch them off assignment. But I think the key for Oklahoma's offense on Saturday is to build on the running game performance that they had from 2 weeks ago against Kansas, pound the football on the ground with Eric Gray and Javonte Barnes to set things up for Dylan Gabriel in the play action game. And, Adam, the best way to beat Iowa State in that rush 3 drop 8 umbrella defense is to run the football. If you can have success on the ground on Saturday, Oklahoma should have a big day this weekend. And I see no reason that Oklahoma can't run the football on this group. Bijan Robinson had over 125 yards last week. Eric Gray, as we found out today, is the number 1 statistical running back in the country, averaging over 7 yards a carry. So if this offensive line can continue to gel, and this offensive line can continue to dominate the line of scrimmage with the backs that Oklahoma has got at their disposal and the tempo in which Jeff Lebby likes to play, I think Oklahoma, if they can dominate the line of scrimmage, they should have some quite a bit of success on Saturday running the football.
Tempo is one that I really wanted Jeff Lebby to be more strategic with how he's running the tempo. And I don't think he necessarily has so far, so I'm not holding my breath that he suddenly changes it up here. But I think this is definitely a game where Iowa State, when they have the ball, they're going to try to hold on to it as long as possible and have fewer and fewer possessions in this game. And I think that's part of the reason why they've been able to have so many one-possession games is that, they're not going to have the guys running away with it. They don't have a ton of playmakers on offense like they have in years past. So to balance that, when OU does have the ball and not allow Iowa State to hold the ball the entire game, I think that could come into play. We'll see how that might affect things.
Yeah, I just talked about Iowa State's defense being at the top of the conference in a lot of statistical categories. Now let's flip the script when looking at the Cyclones offense, particularly in the last 4 matchups against Big 12 teams. In Big 12 competition, Adam, the Cyclones are ranked dead last in rushing, roughly around 61 yards per game, not very good at all. They're dead last in total offense at around 335 yards a game. And to make matters worse, they're dead last in scoring as an offense, averaging just over 16 points per game in Big 12 play. Now, when I look at this offense that's led by offensive coordinator Tom Manning, as an OU fan coming off of a bye week, if we can't slow this Iowa State offense down on Saturday, we're not stopping anybody that's left on our schedule. This is the worst offense in the Big 12, and it's not even close. Their leading rusher, Jareel Brock, is averaging just 57 yards a game. Iowa State's rushing attack.
And he might not, I don't know what his status necessarily is. The last 3 games, he hasn't played a full game. So
yes, he's been pretty banged up. So Iowa State's rushing attack has been pretty much non-existent the entire season. And that's made it tough on first-year starting quarterback Hunter Deckers. The sophomore southpaw is completing 67% of his passes. Yep, that's pretty good by college football standards. But 13 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on the year. They're going to utilize Deckers in the quarterback running game just a little bit, try to keep Oklahoma off balance. I know that Iowa State's coaching staff, they've watched the film. You've seen what mobile quarterbacks have done. Now, Hunter Deckers, he's not Adrian Martinez. He's not Max Duggan, but he can do some things with his legs to keep the Oklahoma defense honest. But for the most part, Deckers, he likes to stand in the pocket. That way he can look for and find Xavier Hutchinson. OU fans, seems like this guy is the Perry Ellis of college football. He's been in this conference for years. Hutchinson is the Big 12 leader in receptions and yards. So that's going to be a tough matchup for Oklahoma's secondary on Saturday. They've got to recognize where number 8 is on the field at all times. Hopefully Billy Bowman is going to be back this week, because OU is going to need all hands on deck to deal with the threat downfield that is Xavier Hutchinson. But even if Billy's not back, Adam, we saw how good of a game Key Lawrence played a couple weeks ago against Kansas. So you've got to have a playmaker, a difference maker in the back end of that secondary for Oklahoma, and we'll see if Key Lawrence can build upon what he did against the Jayhawks 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, Hunter Decker's a guy that already has 7 interceptions on the year. He's on pace to do far more than Brock Purdy did in any of his years as the Iowa State quarterback. And he was a guy that we always thought of as he's going to throw an interception or fumble it at the most inopportune time. We saw that last year when they played in Norman, and it was the case. But Hunter Decker's turning it over more already. And then you look across the board, and Brock's a good player, hasn't played much the last 3 games. Xavier Hutchinson, very good player. I think the next, highest receiver maybe had like 100 yards, maybe like 200 yards receiving. So there's just nothing beyond, those couple of guys. And I think that probably shows up in the fact that, yeah, they've played some close games, but when push comes to shove, they don't have the playmaker to go get them that play when they really need it. Because if you bottle up Xavier Hutchinson, then this offense, I think, can shut down pretty quick. Can OU bottle him up? I don't know. We'll see.
And I do kind of want to point out too, Iowa State, they faced some pretty good defensive teams, over the first few weeks of the season. They took on Iowa to start earlier this season, but then also in Big 12 played Baylor, K-State, and Texas. Pretty good defenses in this conference that they've had to go against. So it's going to be a big, like I said, it's going to be a big test for Oklahoma on Saturday, because even though Iowa State has faced some of the tougher defenses in this conference, I don't think Oklahoma's one of those right now. So I think it's going to be a little bit easier for Iowa State to continue to move the football against the Sooners like they've done in years past. And Adam, one thing that I do want to keep, I do want you and other Oklahoma fans that are traveling up to Ames or just watching the game on TV Saturday, Iowa State's offensive line in some of the games that I've watched this season, probably the weakest unit collectively on this team. Their tackles especially really struggle at times in pass protection. So if there's one thing that, that we've talked about on this podcast, probably more so than others, the position group that's kind of disappeared basically since conference play started has been the defensive line group. So I'm looking at Reggie Grimes, Ethan Downs. To me, this has an opportunity this weekend with how I don't want to say not good, but they don't have very strong left and right tackle positions. To me, this weekend has an opportunity to be the R. Mason Thomas coming out party because, like I said, Hunter Deckers likes to stand back out there, not as mobile of a quarterback like what we've seen over the past few weeks. So R. Mason Thomas, Reggie Grimes coming off the edge. I think Oklahoma is going to be able to stop the running game, force them into some predictable, third down. So pin your ears back, get to the quarterback, and, get the ball back over to Dylan Gabriel, and let's run the football.
I was just about to ask you about R. Mason Thomas. I think we'll see a lot of him this upcoming Saturday, but a lot of people circled the bye week and said that's the opportunity to get some younger guys out on the field. We saw some RSJ, Robert Spears Jennings, because Bowman was out. I'm assuming we'll see more of him if Bowman is indeed out. But are there any other guys, maybe younger guys, that you think might see some more playing time after the bye week?
Definitely wouldn't mind seeing more Gentry Williams, not just on special teams, but let's see if we can factor him into that rotation at the cornerback spot. Obviously, with DJ Graham, one of the starting corners, or one of the top 3 corners on this defense going into the year, and even as recently as Texas getting a bulk of the snaps. With him being over on the offensive side of the football, let's see if we can get Gentry Williams to rotation into there. Probably the fastest guy on the defense. So I would, going up against Xavier Hutchinson, kind of a bigger body, really, really good athlete. Let's see if we can't throw Gentry Williams out there to kind of mix it up with a CJ Colden and a Woody Washington, keep some of those bodies fresh out on the perimeter. So, yeah, I think R. Mason Thomas, I always, me, I want to see more Jaron Canick, but as good as Deshaun White has been playing this season, I'm not sure how much we are going to see him until late in the fourth quarter. But yeah, give me more RSJ at safety and give me more Gentry Williams at corner. 1,000%, please.